Hey guys, let's get more news from Dallas Cowboys, but first don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. The Dallas Cowboys had what many considered a disappointing offseason, which followed a disappointing loss in the wild-card round of the playoffs to the Green Bay Packers, and now they will report to training camp this week. Many are doubtful they can have a successful season in 2024, and many feel they will lose their grip on the NFC East, especially with the Philadelphia Eagles adding star running back Saquon Barkley. Star cornerback Trayvon Diggs missed most of last season with an ACL injury, and he will begin this year's training camp on the physically unable to perform list, per David Moore. Diggs is expected to be placed on the physically unable to perform list later this week once the Cowboys report to Southern California, a person with knowledge of the player's status said, wrote Moore. That designation comes as no surprise since the cornerback is just 9 months removed from surgery to repair a torn ACL. However, Moore also pointed out that team officials feel Diggs will be ready for Week 1 when the Cowboys will head north to take on the Cleveland Browns on the road. Diggs, 25, quickly became a star after Dallas took him in the second round of the 2020 NFL Draft. He made the Pro Bowl in 2021 and 2022 and was also named to the All-Pro First Team in 2021, when he led the league with 11 interceptions while also posting 21 passes defended. Their defense looked dominant at times in 2023, as Darren Bland filled in ably for Diggs, but the defense fell completely apart against the upstart Packers in the playoffs. With no real running game or number 2 wide receiver after CeeDee Lamb, the Cowboys may have to rely on their defense if they are to do anything of note this fall and winter. Over the last 3 seasons, Osa Odigizua has gone from a third-round pick to one of the top players on the Cowboys' defense. However, his individual success aside, the defensive tackle position hasn't been a strength overall for Dallas. Heading into the 2024 training camp, there's legitimate concern that the rest of the group will still be a weak point. Odigizua hasn't lit up the league like fellow 2021 draftee Micah Parsons, few have in the history of the NFL. While not the flashiest DT you'll ever see, Odigizua has earned league-wide respect as a formidable pass rusher who shows up in advanced analytics. He certainly stands out in the modern history of the position for Dallas. The days of Leroy Glover and Jay Ratliff are in the ever more distant past. Unfortunately, Odigizua's fellow DTs haven't enjoyed similar success since he arrived. He was drafted on the tail end of Tristan Hill's run, the 2019 second-round pick who flamed out after a bad rookie year and injuries. Neville Gallimore, a third-rounder in 2020, never developed into more than a backup. Other draft picks like Quinton Bohanna and John Ridgway failed to contribute, and veteran free agents like Gerald McCoy and Brent Urban were lost to injuries. Jonathan Hankins, who joined Dallas midway through the 2022 season, has probably received the most praise of any other Cowboys DT over the last 3 years. But even he was limited, appearing on less than half of the defensive snaps as a run-stopper only. He did solid work when used, but didn't have enough of a workload to get excited about. Recognizing the need to beef up the position, Dallas spent last year's first-round pick on Michigan's Motzie Smith. His rookie season didn't reward this increased investment, but DT is not a position that often yields immediate results. Naturally, Smith's development is a major talking point going into this year's camp. It's not just about justifying the first-round pick, but also because the Cowboys really need him to step up and strengthen the position. Outside of Smith, other options for help at DT are dubious. It's a seemingly thin group going into camp. Veteran Carl Davis, a 32-year-old journeyman who spent a couple of months on Dallas practice squad last year, has never been a full-time starter in the NFL. Rookie Justin Rogers was only a 7th-round pick, and Denzel Daxon, our latest international pathway player, went undrafted. That's not to say they won't surprise us. Jay Ratliff was a 7th-rounder himself. But counting on them to be immediate contributors is scary. Thankfully, the nature of modern football mitigates some of the need at the position. The prevalence of the passing game allows for more creative formations and for bigger defensive ends like DeMarcus Lawrence, Chauncey Golston, and Viliami Fehoko to move inside at times. At the very least, it reduces the number of total snaps you require from the group. That said, Mike Zimmer isn't Dan Quinn and won't utilize small ball formations to the same extent. Dallas' new defensive coordinator tends to like bigger guys and having them play in more traditional roles, so that could shift some responsibility back to the defensive tackles from the last regime. But with that, Zimmer has also had a lot of success maximizing his DT's potential in Minnesota, Cincinnati, and his last run in Dallas. Don't be surprised if defensive tackle is a spot that the Cowboys address sometime over the rest of the summer. If they have an excess of assets at one position near final cuts, maybe another team will have a DT we can use. If nothing else, it could easily be a focal point for the waiver wire. Unless we've had extraordinary success with the Rodgers and Daxon additions, it's hard not see this as a need position coming out of camp. Certainly, we've enjoyed watching Osa Odigizwa's success at defensive tackle since 2021. But it's time to start finding someone else to praise. Mozzie Smith's growth is a key issue for several reasons, but the group's development as a whole is no small matter for the Cowboys this season. We've talked plenty about Dallas' issues against the run over the last few years, but more impact rushing the passer would always be welcome. If the DTs do have a good year, it will be a big feather in the cap of Mike Zimmer and his crew if they can help elevate the position. The Dallas Cowboys have a tough situation on their hands right now. They didn't pay Dak Prescott or CeeDee Lamb, and that decision might come back to haunt them in the foreseeable future. Nonetheless, Stephen A. Smith still believes they should prioritize other players over them, and that player is Micah Parsons. In the latest edition of ESPN's First Take, Smith argued that Parsons embodies everything Cowboys fans believe they are. He talked about Parsons being a disruptive defender and someone who's a relentless competitor and who will go at the opposing team's quarterback. He thinks that Parsons knows that the Cowboys won't get much out of Dak Prescott, which is why he goes all out to make up for that on the defensive side of the field. Smith argues that, as much as the quarterback and wide receiver are usually a priority for teams, Parsons was their most important player, so they should have that deal done first. That makes sense to a degree. Parsons is one of the most talented and disruptive players in the National Football League by a significant margin, although, like Prescott, he's also left plenty to be desired in key moments of the game or the season. There's also his character and all the talking he's done since he entered the league, with reports stating that he was wearing thin in the organization. Even so, if the Cowboys believe in him, as they should, Smith is right about the fact that they must pay him before it's too late.